listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And in this episode, we'll be discussing the new movie Purge Election Year, which just came out. But before we get to that, we'll go through some recent news and things we've been watching. And in terms of news, there hasn't been a lot of horror news lately that was all that relevant that I can remember having happened.
Yeah, this isn't really horror news, but it's something we were talking about the other day is like there's talks of Dread 2, which I'm kind of interested in. I would hope that it would happen, you know, because I really enjoyed the first one. But that movie came out, what, like 2001 or 2011 or 12 or something?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it was a few years back. And I remember hearing about it. And then I think it hit like the streaming services or one of the pay cable channels or something. And I watched it.
because I watched it right after you did.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that was pretty good. But it did not have Sylvester Stallone or Rob Schneider in it. So.
Which is good.
Well, I that's one film I actually watched in 3D on my 3D TV because I missed it in theaters, and I really liked the 3D stuff, especially in the beginning of the film. I thought it was like really well done, so I hope they continue with that.
Yeah, because
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, and it was like one of those movies I remember, like, you know, I saw, I was like, man, because I thought of like the original, you know, Rob Schneider, Judge Dredd, and it just kind of.
You mean the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd?
No, Rob Schneider was in it, so Rob Schneider's Judge Dredd, and it just, I didn't. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is actually really good.
It's a good
Like,
action
it
movie.
really surprised me, you know. And I like, too, there was like no, you know, background. It just went right into it.
It's a little bit like The Raid.
Yeah.
The movie, it's like basically all set in one apartment building. It kind of goes into it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's just them going through levels fighting people the entire time.
But I like movies that sometimes just don't do any of the formalities and just go into it, because I think sometimes it's a lot more enjoyable and giving you.
Well, you didn't get flashbacks to Judge Dredd's past and all that stuff.
And then also, too, Robin Hardy, director of The Wicker Man, passed away as well, which we need to do that one day.
Yeah, we need to do a comparison of the two. Because, like, me personally, I've seen the original and it's pretty good. The Nicolas Cage one, which is atrocious, but for like the last 30, 40 minutes of the movie, is probably way more entertaining because he kicks a woman through a wall and he punches somebody in a bear suit and he gets attacked by bees. Yeah, not the bees. Like, that's, I love those parts of that movie.
And one thing we forgot to mention on last week's podcast was that they released the new theme song from the Ghostbusters that's made by Fall Out Boy featuring Missy Elliott. And so that movie already has probably the largest amount of hate ever spewed at a film before it came out that I can remember.
An annoying amount. Like, it just, I almost get sick of hearing the hate.
It's like, you know, years ago, I remember they had some writers from The Office working on Ghostbusters 3 back when everybody, you know, when Harold Ramis was still alive, and they theoretically were going to try to get Bill Murray in it. And even back then, like 2008 or whenever that was, they were working on it. I was like, that doesn't sound like a good idea to make a new one when everybody's old and bloated. And, you know, I was like, okay, that franchise can go. And then they decided to reboot it with, you know, 4 female leads. And it's like, well, at least it's a fresh concept for it.
Yeah.
But then the fact that they took these, like, everyone's like, oh, you're raping my childhood. And
I don't understand, because they're not. Because, like, you talking about movies, when did Ghostbusters come out? I mean, it came out years before I was born.
84.
Yeah, so I was born 90. So 6 years before I was born, a year before you were born. I think, you know, you're 85, so you weren't born the same year. And it's like, it's not, because that movie is probably not really made for you as much as it is for people of the current generation. And they're not going out and destroying, they're not burning the original copies. The movie still exists. It's not like they've blacked it out where you can't find it.
Well, I think that people have the same fear they do for everything. It's like, oh, people will say that the new one's good and the old one sucks.
So who cares?
But, you know, I don't I think that happens to some extent, but I don't think that's the long-term legacy of these things. Because when we'll do a podcast sometime pretty soon on Rob Zombie's Halloween, but there are a lot of people hated it so much because they're like, oh, all these dumb kids now are going to say this is the definitive Halloween and the original sucks. And it's like, there may be people who said that when it came out, and there may be a small pocket of people who say that now. But I
which
don't
is
think
their right to say
But
that.
I don't think the general opinion is that it's better than the original.
No.
That's not the
You know,
case at all.
Well, I mean, you have to even like The Wicker Man. Like the first one was amazing,
Yeah.
and it didn't just because they made a bad remake,
terrible
It doesn't mean that
yeah.
it diminished the quality of that original
Yeah.
at all. And two, Evil Dead, they made a good Evil Dead remake.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that first one still wasn't. You know what I
No,
mean?
I just
these
But
films can
I
live.
think the approach they took with the Evil Dead though is it was a reboot that existed in the same
Like,
universe the first one's happening, kind of.
Yeah, but it was actually a very well done reboot. But I haven't seen Ghostbusters. None of us have. It hasn't come out yet.
Yeah,
I
we'll
will
cover it
see
when it does.
I just think that there's so much like people
Unnecessary hate.
so much unnecessary hate, and also because it's like female leads. I think if it had been like anybody's gonna get hate on it because, like you said, this ridiculous nostalgia that people have for it. Because Ghostbusters 1 was good, 2 is not.
2 was like some people defended a lot. To me, 2. I'm not. Let me finish. I'm gonna let you finish, but the second one to me felt like a remake of the first one, like where it had essentially the same plot beats. It's like, oh, they're down and out, then they start doing stuff. People don't believe them. They get locked up, and then they get let go to save the day.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, it was kind of the same story. And I think even Bill Murray and everybody even said like, oh, it was just for the money, and we kind of had to do it.
Yeah.
And most of them weren't very happy with the end result.
I still like the second one though.
I mean, I still
It's
enjoy
an enjoyable movie, but it's not a classic on the level of the first one. And even the people involved with it kind of acknowledge that.
Yeah, and I saw both of them at the same time. You know what I mean? Because they were pretty close at the same time. So as a kid too, you're like, it does seem like the same movie, but that's what I wanted when I was younger, and like so have always been okay with that. I've been like, oh, that's fine. Like,
too though, like the cast made it good.
Yeah,
too,
yeah. I'm like, I'm just fine seeing
but-
them back. It's not an atrocious movie at all. Like it's
Yeah.
I'm
But
glad
just,
that second one exists.
Like this movie got put on such a pedestal since this came out, and it just like I love it. It's one of my favorites, but I think that the hate needs to just wait till the movie comes out, and it might be a complete trash pile. But if not, but here's another thing too, though. These people have inadvertently generated so much buzz for this movie that it might just get a ridiculous. It might. I don't know
that negative buzz like this is going to equate to box office dollars.
Well, one thing that didn't help it was that theme song that they released.
The theme
for it.
song is not.
yeah, it's
The
not.
Fall Out Boy one. The Japanese version is much better.
The Japanese version is just the original song with like new lyrics.
Yes, yeah.
And it keeps the
Same tunes and kind of
like the Fall Out Boy one. Like I'll see about plugging it in here under this.
and put
but,
the Japanese one in there too.
But the Fall Out Boy one to me just sounds like noise. It's just like a wall of sound with no real rhythm. It doesn't resemble the original. And somebody was saying like, oh, well, Fall Out Boy's for the kids. They're the most popular band with young people. It's like I hated them when I was in college. Like, they're older than us.
Fall Out Boy has like some songs I've listened to that I don't hate.
Well, like,
but
I hope they release this just like as a troll, and it's not actually in the film. Like, then all of a sudden everybody's like ready to hate it, and then they play like the original theme or something. Everybody's like, "Oh, great, thank God!"
no,
and
but
that was just like in the end of the
But
trailer.
even then, though, some of the
Credits.
neckbeard dudes are just gonna be pissed off regardless. It doesn't matter what
Well,
they
I think
do.
if they had taken that exact same cast, director, and everything, and then just said instead of Ghostbusters, it's some Ghostbusters inspired project. I don't know, like, would the amount of hate be the same?
Yeah, probably.
But I know that like when the trailer for that movie hit, it got like so many dislikes. Like immediately upon being published, it had so many dislikes that nobody could have possibly watched it all the way through as the dislikes were like pouring in when it first launched.
Man.
And this Fall Out Boy song, I haven't checked it recently, but I know the general consensus is that a lot of people hate it.
But I just think like this movie could do anything. Like some of these people, they could like hand them gold bars coming in the movie, and if it had Ghostbusters, the remake like logo stamped on, it, they toss them away. So like, there's nothing you can do to make some of these people happy. Like you could come out and just like give them a new car, and they still hate it. They just don't, regardless of what you do.
And
they're not
granted,
gonna
there's
be
a
happy.
lot of people, but I'm sure from Sony's perspective, they're like, this is not the best, this is not the ideal situation, but is it the vocal minority? Like, is it this group of people that are always vocal online? Like, the average parents or, 35-year-old people that don't stay like their entire day on message boards.
Yeah.
The average person, it seems like, you know what I mean, with a family and a normal life.
Well, I guess
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody that has, like Sean said, and look, you know, some people might hate it. I'm not trying to say
I haven't anybody in real life that's been like, oh God, that Ghostbusters.
Yeah, like I have not seen that, like, because most of the people I interact with are fairly normal, so like they have mortgages and stuff to worry about. So Ghostbusters isn't that big of a deal.
I mean, like I said, and it's not out.
You know?
Like we can't watch it yet, so there's no way to tell what the quality of it is. I mean, I like a lot of the stuff that people involved with it.
It cannot be worse than the Green Inferno. So,
but that's not a.
I was just saying it can't be that bad.
Spy was really good. Did y'all see Spy?
I know this is like different.
I have not.
It's really good. It's probably Paul Feig's. I think it's probably his best movie.
All I know was there's a movie about a spy and it stars a lady. I'm not watching that shit.
That's why it's really good too. It kind of subverts, like Jason Statham. He is like another, like she's supposed to be like essentially somebody that kind of helps at home base, like a tech person, you know?
Yeah.
To Jason Statham's character, I believe, because he's like the badass. I don't know if it's his, or it's another character, I think. Anyway, Jason Statham is another like agent, but he's supposed to be like this badass
the comedy one?
action figure or action star.
Yeah.
But he's kind of a bumbling idiot, so they like subvert the roles and stuff. Like so hopefully they bring that sort of intelligence and like self-awareness and an insight to the Ghostbusters film, and it's not just like, oh, here's 4 women. You know what I mean? Like I think the people involved are really talented.
My point is like this is going back to the remake of what was the skin eating disease,
cabin fever.
All right, my point. I know they're not comparable movies. I'm saying like that movie made me physically mad having watched it, to know that like I gave up hours of my life to. I don't think, even as bad as Ghostbusters is, it cannot be that bad. You know,
Well, but that's
all
not,
like debatable, and
That's
anybody
like saying that this go-kart I bought isn't as fast as this Ferrari.
No, but I'm saying is like I don't think it could be that bad.
Well,
I think Scott Weinberg, film critic, I believe he was the one that tweeted that he would like to see a Cabin Fever made every year, same exact script, just a different director, to see what people would do with it, and like how far it would go, you know?
Well, the thing I think that doomed that project, I mean, some people may like it, I don't know. But the thing was, I think since using the same script as the original was just a cost-cutting measure to not have to pay any writers for the new one, you could have definitely taken the idea from Cabin Fever and slightly updated to account for, you know, the Ebola virus outbreak stuff that happened, or, you know, the different things that are more relevant when it comes to like bacteria and diseases and stuff, and made it a little bit more relevant for the times, as opposed to just using the script that was written, I think, in the 90s, like the mid 90s, late 90s. You could have taken that script and updated it and made something interesting, as opposed to just redoing the same movie with a less, I don't know if it's less experience, just the cast wasn't anywhere near as good. Because I rewatched the original one because it's on HBO, and it's like, okay, all these actors are actually pretty good, and they all have distinct personalities, and you can tell people apart. In the remake, it's like, wait a minute, which one is which?
And too, how much time do they have for rehearsal? How much time do they have to do multiple takes on set? How was the how good was the director actually directing the actors? You know, I mean, there's a bunch of factors, but yeah, the actors felt very almost just stand-in-ish to me. It was like, oh, this is just like a TV version where they've got like some blank faces to fill these roles.
And that, like we have to go back down that movie.
But my entire point that was, we just watched a bunch of bad movies just in general.
But there's a difference between a remake of a 20-year-old B movie with a budget of like $2 million versus this $100 million tentpole film starring, you know, Kristen Wiig, who's been in a lot of huge hits, and Melissa McCarthy, who's been in huge hits, and Paul Feig, or Feig, how you pronounce it, who's directed a lot of hits. Well, we'll have to see how the movie is when it turns out. I'm not immediately a hater of it. The first trailer wasn't good and helped reinforce people's fears, but that was just one trailer. And I've heard, you know, like some of the other trailers I've watched, some of the other international ones were better.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But that Fall Out Boy song is not good. And I don't think it's meant to be good by anyone over the age of 18.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like got a Chevy truck. When you do that, you get like Sirius XM, and one of the stations was like talking about how awesome the song was, and then you listen to it, and it was a like I was like, okay, I'm kind of open to it.
Yeah.
It was not good. There was
not
nothing,
afraid.
Yeah. It was nothing I liked about it. And it was just
Can
like,
you just
like
play that on loop just underneath this entire podcast?
Yeah, come at us, Sony, sue us. But so there's that news. And then also yesterday, so we're shooting on July 4th, so happy 4th of July, a day late because it's going to be coming out tomorrow. But there's a movie shooting locally, Crazy Fat Ethel, or I said that weird, Crazy Fat Ethel. And it was myself, Sean, his wife Nicole, and then Chad went, and we were extras in one of the scenes.
And from my understanding, this was a film like I guess in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, it's
and
a
the
remake.
guy locally bought the rights to remake it.
Yeah, so they're making that. So we'll be in the background of that scene most likely.
I think Brian Dorton is the director, I believe.
Yes.
I hope I'm getting that right.
Yes, so we'll be in the background of a scene whenever that comes out. But maybe once we get a little bit longer into that, we'll try to get an interview or something about it as they get further along with that project. But so you can be on the lookout for that. But was there any other news? I don't really remember much in movie wise that was big news.
Yeah, I mean, John Carpenter was talking smack about The Walking Dead. That got some people.
Oh yeah, I
talking.
saw that where
good.
he essentially said like they made a movie in the 60s called Night of the Living Dead, and everything since then has just been remaking that.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of Walking Dead fanboys were bashing him hard, and people were bashing him over his comments on Friday the 13th, like where he said there was essentially just a cynical cash in on the success of Halloween. But that's really kind of hard to refute because Sean S. Cunningham said that.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, Halloween made a bunch of money, so he took out an ad for a movie that had no script, nothing attached.
Yeah, he's been very adamant at the beginning. That was a money-making idea.
So that's kind of hard to disagree with. The Walking Dead, like I'm a pretty big vocal critic of that show.
But you also watch it, so you have a voice, I think.
And I love the pilot. The pilot episode, directed by Frank Darabont, had a pretty big budget, pretty big in scope. Was beautifully shot, awesome episode. And then there was so the first season was 6 episodes. Season 2 was 16 episodes and had a lower budget than a 6-episode season 1. And then they just stalled and made all the stuff slow. And like we've talked about how they shot supposedly 11 death scenes, which is idiotic considering they already have a low budget. Or they are notoriously frugal with their money, but yeah, well,
and yeah, maybe they got to be, but then again, you have Game of Thrones. That's
yeah, Game of Thrones is dropping like $80 million plus on each season, and The Walking Dead's probably spending like a fifth of that.
Yeah, which I mean, I guess it's the situation they're in, but
well, AMC has also been known to be quite frugal with some of those series.
I know.
But I just feel like with that one as popular as it is, it just seems like they would give it a little bit more money.
But to be fair, to give AMC some credit, maybe them being frugal with The Walking Dead allows them to branch out and do stuff like Better Call Saul and The Preacher. You know what I mean? Like hopefully and they're making good choices. It's not like, they just have The Walking Dead and that's their only like flagship show. Like they have shows for all different audiences. Because I don't watch The Walking Dead, but I love Better Call Saul. And I've been meaning to watch Preacher, but I haven't. But real quick about John Carpenter, the best thing about all that and everybody freaking out with those comments, he is the guy who gives the least amount of shit in the world. Like he does not care what anybody says about him. So it's funny that he goes out there and just says stuff.
Yeah.
Because it lights everybody up, but he could care less what anybody comments or says about it. You know,
he's sitting here. It's like, I've already made my money from Halloween.
Yeah,
and
he
I've
has
already,
his legacy. It's in stone.
He's like, I'm just on tour now for my album. Like he gets to tour with like his son and, the people he's worked with, and the music that I think a lot more people he knows really well or family or whatever. So he's just out there doing what he wants to, lobbing some grenades, and then just like he's not directing episodes of these shows or making movies anymore, really. So he doesn't have to worry about the backlash. He's just like boom. But I think
I love John Carpenter, by the way.
Yeah. So is that all the news before we go into things we've been watching?
That's about all I can think of.
So
we had a commenter on YouTube tell us that we need to be watching
Outcast.
Outcast, but yeah, we don't have an easy way to watch that.
I meant the band.
No, there's a show, and I really wanted to watch that because the pilot was directed by Adam Wingard, and I've been meaning to watch that. It's just it's not available to purchase and things like that.
It's co-created by Robert Kirkman, right?
Yeah, the creator of The Walking Dead. So I've been wanting to watch it, and I know there's some ways you can watch it illegally, but usually I use like my Chromebook or my phone to watch stuff, and I don't really want to use my editing PC to go to websites that tend to fill your computer up with spyware.
Did somebody say this was almost like The Walking Dead with demons? I think I think at least demons are the approach for it instead of zombies.
Yeah, hopefully they meant like the comic and not the TV show.
Yeah, I don't know, but I've heard good things about it, and the person that commented on YouTube said it's awesome. We need to watch it, and I would really like to.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch it. One thing I did watch this week that was not good was I've caught up on MTV's Scream, and the last episode that I watched, or maybe there was an episode this week, I don't know, because it's 4th of July week, but the last episode was called Dawn of the Dead, and this show essentially it's like 5 or 6 episodes in, and they've killed one character that you even knew who they were, and then like a secondary character. So they've had 2 kills in like 5 or 6 episodes. And you compare that to like when I reviewed Slasher, like they killed at least a person per episode. Scream Queens usually killed a person per episode. Not that that's the bar of quality. It's just
No, but you expect that.
Slasher show,
and it's mostly centers on melodrama and stuff that's not interesting.
No, what did you expect? It's on MTV.
No, it's just like, but I think they're like, I know some people like that show. I just feel like, it has none of the bite that the original Scream had. Mm-hmm. People can argue about if they enjoy the original Scream or if they like it or hate it, but the one thing you have to admit if you watched them was, like, it had a personality and it was, doing something. This show just kind of sputters about, and, like, it doesn't go far enough in any one direction. Like, if it was much more about, like, social media affecting, like, kills and stuff, like there's a little bit of that in there, but not enough to really make it all that pertinent. I mean, there's like 20-second short videos that you see show up on Facebook that more effectively use like social media and modern technology to show like a kill happening than the show does. And like I said, it's all just teenage melodrama with people doing dumb stuff. And this last episode, it was, like, the episode's title was Dawn of the Dead, and they actually like a dead body showed up at the school, and the scene that was kind of a throwback to Carrie, where a main character got blood on him, like during a pageant or some type of contest or something. Yeah, forgot what it was. It doesn't matter. It was annoying. But so they have the entire school in lockdown, and they're interviewing everyone. It's like, could you lock an entire school down and try to interview every student if they found a dead body? Could you do that without people's parents or attorneys present? Like, you're not really supposed to question minors without parents present, right? Or you shouldn't.
I will say, when I attended high school, there was a drug ring that was broken up because a parent was selling pills to the children, and then they detained an entire class, like an entire, like, I think it was like the sophomore class, and looked through all their cell phones. And so I do think something like that would be possible because it happened when I was in high school. Probably breaks a bunch of
drugs too.
Yeah. So they did do that, and a lot of stuff happened out of it. So I would say it's feasible to think that something like that could possibly happen. If it was during school hours, they probably.
So if I was there, even if I had nothing to do with that, I'd be like, I'm calling the ACLU right now. You can't sit here. Like, what happens in the era of you have an iPhone with a password? Do you have to unlock your phone with the password? Because I'm pretty sure that your Fifth Amendment rights protect you, and it's all being challenged in court in various cases.
But most kids don't know
that.
Most kids are like, like, I mean, maybe they're smarter now.
Or maybe if they watch the classic Chappelle Show episode where he's in court, he's like, I plead the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th.
Yeah, but the kids in high school now are like, were born when that episode probably came out.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just I think they could probably get away with that now? I don't know.
It's just if I had nothing to do with like this murder, but they're just sitting here detaining everyone, it's like, I need a parent present or an attorney. I'm not letting.
But
you
I would say
me.
It was like during school hours.
Yeah,
you got to be there anyway.
But do you have to answer police questions though? I mean, isn't there like due process and?
To me, that just
amendment.
If it's like, did you murder this person? No. Okay, you walk out of the room and you're done. Instead of being like, no, I'm not gonna do it, and you escalate it, and then you get tased.
What I'm saying is, I want this teen-centered
so you'd be the
slasher
cop
show. I want this teen-centered slasher show to turn into a courtroom drama where they're testing the limits of the Constitution.
Then you need to go watch.
That would be a cheap way to do the next season. Just have it all set in a courtroom and just show flashback clips from the other seasons.
Well, that's like, I want to do a skit where, like, in these different horror movies and action movies, like, people always, like, they knock a cop out and steal their gun to save somebody and all this stuff. It's like, it's great that you saved your girlfriend, your whatever. But you just broke like 5 laws, and you're still probably getting arrested for them, and you're at least going to trial. You might get acquitted by the jury because of the reasons you did it. But I don't really, if you knock a cop out and steal their gun, that's a crime. But other stuff I watched that I actually did enjoy, since they're on Netflix now, I watched Lethal Weapon 1 and Beverly Hills Cop 1, just because a lot of that, like both of those series have hit Netflix, and it's a bunch of 80s goodness.
Mm-hmm. Well, Back to the Future is on there,
Back
too.
to the Future, parts 1 through 3. And so I watched those, and, I've watched them so many times, there's really not a lot to say. It's just enjoyable movies. And it's funny to forget that Eddie Murphy was at one point one of the biggest stars in the world. But, since then he's made a lot of terrible movies and had the hooker thing. And
Speaking of which, Bowfinger's on Netflix too.
and then, so there's not a lot to say about those just because, everybody knows what they are. I watched The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which isn't really horror, but it was the Guy Ritchie spy film that was like set in the 60s. That came out last year that had Henry Cavill, who's Superman, and Armie Hammer. And it was based off of a TV show, I believe, that Ian Fleming had involvement with, who was the writer of all the Bond novels. So I thought it was a fun movie. I think the reason it might have not done so great at the box office is it was an action comedy, but it wasn't like slapstick comedy like something like Get Smart or Spy or anything like that. It was more of just like they're doing action with funny beats in it.
Well, it's funny because you say that. I never got that from any of the like commercials or trailers I saw for it. Like, I know the movie, I remember seeing it, and I never even grasped that from any of the...
Well, here too, Guy Ritchie also did the Sherlock Holmes films. The more recent ones, which had Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, 'cause there's
like you
two
can
in
tell.
that
So Sherlock Holmes immediately more recognizable. You had some comedy in the trailers with Robert Downey Jr. and who was Watson in those films?
Oh, it was also dude was in Spy, wasn't it?
Real quick, weren't there 2 consecutive Sherlock Holmes films around the same time?
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes.
But anyway, and
Jude Law.
Yeah, and he jumps to this, which is, even people are questioning, like, wait, this was a show in the 60s, right, or whatever. People don't really know their property. And then you have Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer, who just seem like people who have fallen into stardom and haven't really... so you got it hasn't been like a demand from the people for them to be stars. Yeah. They've just kind of like...
You got Superman and the Lone Ranger... But nobody saw the Lone Ranger and Henry Cavill.
Superman wasn't like a massive hit.
Or Superman and the Winklevoss twins.
Yeah, the Winklevi.
But yeah, it's kind of funny to say it because like when you think of like Superman, like even though it's a big role, it to me I don't have the urge to watch him in anything else. It's just I'm like, oh man, I want to watch Henry Cavill and watch stuff.
So I enjoyed that movie. I think it's worth watching. It, it's not anything earth shattering, but it's a nice period piece film that's got some fun spy action, and I enjoyed it. I just, didn't catch it in theaters because, all the things going against it. But if you can catch it on a streaming service or see it somewhere, I think it's enjoyable. But that's pretty much all the stuff I watched this week. Did anyone else watch anything noteworthy aside from the Purge films?
Well, I didn't watch the original. I watched the second because I saw it when it came in theater, so I watched the second Purge and when we watched the other day. But anyway, I'm kind of like you. I had like an 80s movie marathon weekend because I watched Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 and 4. I don't like 3. And then I watched Beverly Hills Cop 1 like you, and I also watched the first 2 Back to the Futures. So Netflix actually has, if you like 80s movies,
that's what I was going through my wife. I'm like, oh wow, they actually have a good lineup right now. It's gotten much better.
Yeah,
they dropped a lot of money trying to get all that stuff.
Yeah,
but to me, it's like kind of awesome because I was figuring like if our dad found out that all the lethal weapons were on there, he would just like hold the phone and just like not do anything.
Our mom, I just bought that collection, but Grant only paid $20 for it, and I wanted it for the special features. Yeah. But then as soon as I bought it, I saw like 2 weeks later they announced that all of them were coming to Netflix. Probably still would have bought it though because I wanted to see the behind the scenes.
And also, just a side note that when our parents first got a VCR, my dad's first movie he bought was Beverly Hills Cop, the original. So he showed it to everybody at nauseum that came to the house, and my mom hates that movie because she's watched it so many times.
Yeah, that was back in the day when VCRs were like $600, $700, and VHS tapes were a lot more expensive.
Yeah. It's just funny because every time we ever bring that movie up, she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I hate it because I guess she had watched it so much in the 80s. Yeah.
I remember us renting Lethal Weapon movies a lot, especially when like new ones would come out. Like that, like I loved both those films though when I was younger.
Just a side note about Lethal Weapon 4. I don't know why I always remember this, but I remember some of the trailers from it when it came out was like the guy with the flamethrower. That's something that I always remember.
And
That
Chris Rock.
Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
like,
a very memorable.
something
scene.
about that. I just remember the trailers about it, and I was like, oh, I'll go watch Lethal Weapon 4 because I haven't probably watched it.
I think the trailer for that, one of the trailers is basically almost that whole scene.
Yeah.
And that's how it is too with Lethal Weapon. Which one do they go in the building because there's a bomb and they're trying to defuse it? Is that 3?
Well, it happens
Where they blow up
kind of in 2
at the very
as well.
beginning of it?
Oh,
And
I
they-
think it's 3.
3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I only watched one this week.
Yeah, they
Two's
show that
very
whole
good.
scene for one of the trailers because, like I said, I dug through like all those special features, watched the trailers and everything.
But
So I watched Death Wish 2 because I recently watched Death Wish.
Death Wish.
It's very good. You know, Lawrence Fishburne replaces.
he's in there?
Yeah, he
Okay,
replaces
I
Jeff
can't-
Goldblum as one of the
All right.
thugs.
I had to go
And
back.
he looks
Yeah, now you say
he
that, I
looks like
remember that.
Bebop. He has those
Yeah.
Bebop glasses on too.
Like if anybody's watching this, it has not watched Death Wish at least 1 and 2, you need to.
they're on Amazon Prime
Because they're so good. Oh, they are? Awesome. I have to go
free,
watch when I get home then. Because Charles Bronson beats the shit out of people with like pennies in a sock in the first one, and he's just kind of like a nonchalant badass.
Yeah.
So it's really enjoyable because it's kind of like some of the like the films that came out before the Lethal Weapons.
what's funny is if you compare like the different eras, if you compare like the physique and physicality of Charles Bronson to what somebody who is in those movies today would be when they're in their 50s.
Well, kind of what's his name from The Purge, the lead in the past 2.
Frank Grillo.
Yeah, he's in really good shape. So you look, and he's 50. So you look at his physique from like being in the Marvel movies and
Or
stuff.
you look at like any of those superhero films where the dudes are getting up there.
Yeah.
Or like Daniel Craig as Bond, he's like, mid to late 40s. Or Hugh Jackman
like
is
not that,
Wolverine.
and we're not saying like
Charles Bronson he looks like somebody that may have been an architect of that age. Like he fits the role.
Yeah.
So
But he wasn't like
it makes
in
it
bad shape.
better,
He was just in normal. He was
Yeah,
a
you
normal
can still
person.
see him beating the shit out of some people.
Yeah,
pulling them
it
up
was
and
like a
shooting
good,
them.
a happy bounce. The thing about that too, like even this film,
His
it's kind
poor
of
daughter goes through so much in the first. Didn't she kill herself in the second one, or is that the third one?
she accidentally kills herself. She jumps out the
Jumps in-
window
okay.
and lands on the fence.
Because she gets raped again, all right?
Yeah.
because she gets raped
Yeah.
and beaten the first one, and it's like she just had a terrible life.
and it's almost like comical in that like the same things happen again,
Yeah.
but the film does not like. I mean, they talk about it, but I want to see how Eli Roth's going to handle this because it is just so. It's almost ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like that the things keep happening to him. Through
yeah,
each
just
film.
him. Yeah,
After-
just in
after the-
different.
After the first rape, the girl's gonna violently shit everywhere. And I mean, I would not say that he wouldn't do that because there was a scene similar to that in Green Inferno.
I don't want him to
What was it?
mess with these.
Well,
movies.
and the thing about it too, it's like I hope they need to address the fact that being a vigilante with a gun is not the right thing to do, more so than they do in these films.
Yeah, because
like,
it's funny because like in the first 2, like I can't remember because I've seen all of them. They all kind of like we talk about the Jason film or Friday 13th films. They kind of blend in.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is it? The first or second one where the cops like you just need to go at the end of the movie? They're just like
First
give him,
one.
yeah, they just give him like a ticket and say go.
Yeah.
and he doesn't get in trouble. And like, but the flip is as like Lethal Weapon, where you have cops are doing way more destruction than them. They're just like, oh, okay, that's fine.
well, it's one of those things where it's like it could put the wrong ideal into people's
Yeah.
heads. It's like okay, let the cops do their things because he just goes through and with a gun.
yeah, and just shoots people.
I
yeah.
almost think that they need to maybe get rid of the gun
and just do the
action
sock
as
with the
much
pennies.
in the remake, and maybe you know what I mean, because then you start falling into all these other things.
Well, it's
And
a much
kind of-
different political landscape.
Yes,
and-
there's a lot of other pitfalls you can go into being criticized, and also being maybe like a film that some people look forward to be like, oh look, that's why I need to go out there with a gun. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
like if I got my druthers, they just would not make this movie because they could just make something original. You don't need to
Well,
remake that
my thing too is like this. I mean, it's not that this,
franchise that hasn't aged particularly well.
I'd be interested to know on Corey's thought on this because I know he's a big fan of it too because we've talked about it in one of the podcasts he was on. But it's just like it's a movie that like I don't really see the need to remake it. And I mean, not that I'm like upset
It's
that
kind
they
of a
are,
time capsule
but
of
it's
its
kind
era.
of and it's like Charles. And it also had a person like Charles Bronson in it, who's a pretty cool dude, and it was in a lot of action movies in his time. So it's like, who are you going to get to replace him?
Well, it's going to be Bruce Willis, and if this. one
Oh
actually
yeah,
happens.
but still though, but it's like
Bruce Willis already has his own flavor of, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like now he's doing a remake of an action film when he was doing Die Hard like shortly after this. You know what I mean? And just he has his own identity.
Yeah, Die Hard changed action films from that point forward from kind of what they were prior to that, like your Dirty Harry and Death Wish. But we'll see if that actually happens.
But I feel like though with Bruce Willis in this, it might not be.
I don't know if it's going to happen because that movie's been in development for a long time. Yeah. Hopefully it just doesn't happen. They make something original.
Eli Roth just got announced because it had 2 other directors before this.
But he's been attached to a bunch of stuff that never happened. So
maybe for good reason.
So I also watched Dead of Summer, which is on Freeform. And William, you pointed out it's kind of an offshoot of an ABC property, right?
It's like channel? ABC Family rebranded as Freeform.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the ABC Family. They changed it. Dead of Summer. It's like kind of a sleepaway camp, Friday the 13th type show. But at the same time, it's not. I wouldn't call this a slasher, and that's kind of what I like about it so far. Is that it's set at a camp. They actually go to camp. Some former, I guess they used to be kids at the camp, and now they're going to be counselors. They go there to get it ready to open it up, which is kind of like Friday the 13th when they like repair the camp because it's been closed for a while.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the setup. And then there's like a new girl who never went to the camp. And as it's going along, there's like flashbacks and they show, I guess, things that happened to her like 4 months earlier and her in school and maybe some things that had happened to her friends or people dying and stuff like that. So there's like deaths in this episode, but there's not like none of the core cast members are getting killed off, which I think is a smart way to maybe you could handle a slasher show where if you're revealing some backstory elements, to have some kills in there, or if you don't want to pick off the main cast, they're revealing stories as they go along. And I think it was, oh man, I'm kicking myself for not remembering this. I think Tony Todd is in the opening scene of this too.
Yeah, he's supposed to be in it.
Yeah. Okay. So Tony Todd, and it's like probably maybe in the 1800s. So something happened at the camp, like some type of cult activity or something like that. So it seems to be bringing in maybe it's kind of ghost, not for sure. There's a little bit somebody that looks like the Ring walking, chasing the lady. Like it's almost like It Follows too, where she's the only person that could see it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. It feels like they're pulling in a lot of different horror elements, and it may be a show where they're going to kind of play with the horror genre in that way and kind of fit it all into the overarching story of this camp. Kind of things that happened in the past, things that happened to her. And it has more personality than the Scream show for sure. It doesn't have a super strong personality, but they actually have like some pop music in there. I think like Janet Jackson and like they have some legit pop music in that first episode. I definitely think it's worth watching just that first one to see if it kind of interests you at all. But watching it, I'm on board. I'll watch another episode, especially it being summer, of it's set in the 80s. So it's, all 80s music. There's just a little bit though, and they don't pump it up too much. But at the same time, even though it's set in the 80s, it feels like a TV show set in the 80s. Like it doesn't have an 80s feel. It's just they're wearing 80s clothes. You know what I mean? And it's supposed to be the 80s.
It's like tubular.
It doesn't really have the vibe, but they don't overplay it too.
Roll the blade.
If you want to watch the show, the first 2 episodes are free if you download the Freeform app, but it does not work with the Chromecast, which is what I usually use to watch stuff. So I have not checked that out yet. But there's like I'm watching this crap like Scream, so I need to start just watching. Like I need to watch Outcast, and then I'll try to check out Dead of Summer after that.
Yeah, but, Dead of Summer, it's not like stellar, but
well, I think the AV Club, right? They did like a review of the entire season and gave it like a C, or maybe it's like a C minus. And it's like it's so absurd that it's entertaining, but it's not good.
Yeah, there's just like a lot of stuff happening that first episode. I'm like interested in watching more, and I don't like hate any of the characters. Like they've all been interesting enough.
I still want to see like it essentially be Wet Hot American Summer as a horror film. I want to see that, but I don't
with the same cast.
But was there anything else I may watch before we get into the Purge election year?
I
No.
don't think so. Aside from those first 2 Purge movies.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss the Purge election year now. We'll hold off on spoilers for I don't know, there's really not a lot you can spoil.
Well, I think if we bring up any of that, how it ties into those first 2 movies, we'll have spoilers for the first 2 films.
Yeah, we're going to spoil the first 2 films if you haven't seen them. Not like, once again, not there's a lot of spoil if you've even seen the trailers for what those movies are.
Or if you've just seen the lead from one movie to another, there's not much spoils.
So the first Purge was about Ethan Hawke's family, and it was about, he was the dealer of home security equipment that everyone in an affluent upper-class neighborhood used to secure their homes to be safe during the Purge. He became wealthy. Like, they even mentioned, like, 5 years prior, like, they were so behind on their, money they could barely afford to pay rent, and now they're super wealthy because he sells all this equipment. And it's, his house is fortified. His son sees a guy, like a young black guy, being chased through the streets who's trying to escape some people that are chasing him, and his son lets him in the house. And then these kind of yuppie white kids who are chasing the dude down, trying to kill him, tell Ethan Hawke and his family, like, if they don't put the guy outside for them, that they will break into their house and kill everybody. And, the first movie, like, I hadn't watched it when it originally came out. I only watched it recently. And there's a lot of abrupt decisions that Ethan Hawke's character makes. It's like at one point he decides not to send the guy outside to his death. He decides to keep him inside and for then to defend his home against the Purgers. And like his kids are idiots because like his daughter has her boyfriend over who snuck in before they lock the house down with their security system. And he wants to go talk to her dad because apparently her dad, Ethan Hawke's character, thinks that he's too old for the daughter and that they shouldn't be together. So he goes in and tries to shoot and kill him. And then Ethan Hawke returns fire and kills the boyfriend. So then the daughter spends the entire movie like hiding in the house separate from everyone. Like if this
For
entire
no reason, really.
Yeah, for no reason. And the son hides through the house because he was the one that let the guy in and didn't want him to die. And everyone else wants him to go back outside so that the people will leave them alone. So then the son hides throughout the house. And there's this idiotic stuff like the guy that is, like the guy that they let in, like the homeless guy, is hiding in a closet that the kid showed him how to find with like his remote control car because it has like lights on it and a camera. So the kid uses the car to show the guy where to hide in the house. And then his sister is going to the same spot to hide. And he doesn't do anything to tell her. It's like, hey, you might not want to go in there because there's a dude in there who, doesn't seem to be necessarily a bad guy, but everyone's trying
He's desperate. He's in a desperate situation. So
you have that element. And then you have the fact that, if they had all just stayed together, and then like Lena Headey is the wife, of course she's Cersei on Game of Thrones, and she was in Dread as the main bad guy, and she's been in a few other things. She was in 300, but she just kind of spends like the third act of the movie just wandering around the house with like a gun, like pointing it around, like the first one.
I like that she kind of becomes the lead at the end too.
Yeah,
like that.
But it seems like her role for most of the movie is just to wander around.
Yeah.
And had they just had everyone stay together and go to a secure spot in the house, and like, even in the basement, the kid manages to get snuck up on somehow, and then they don't untie the guy. Like when they decide to keep the guy in their house, the homeless guy, and to keep him from dying, they don't then untie him and give him a weapon to help them, which was kind of odd. And he doesn't show up till the very end. So there were some missteps, I think, in that aspect. The concept was solid of the Purge. And the first movie was just so profitable because it only cost like $3 million to make that you knew they were going to make more movies.
Well, I think the best thing about this franchise is that it has a concept that is kind of rich for exploration.
Yeah.
And you can go. They could have went a million different directions with any of these films and came up with something interesting. And it also has like a unique identity where that's the identity of this film. Like it makes it its own thing where other films can't ape this.
Yeah.
Unless they take a concept very similar that is like obviously a ripoff.
Yeah.
Like this has its own identity. So even if it's not done super well, it's original enough to where it's like, okay, that you can kind of, give it a pass based on the concept alone.
Well, I guess too, like just to clarify too, I don't know if I stated this in the basic summary I gave, was that the Purge is a 12-hour period of time during which anything is legal, including murder, except for like class 10 or above politicians, which is like senators and people in the president's office and the executive branch and stuff like that. And you can't use explosives above a certain level. So you can't use like grenades or RPGs or
C4
or tanks or something. So it's mostly just like, any type of standard gun or assault rifle or, knives or.
So you would think his defense company would also invest in some offense, like have some turrets in the yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the most obvious thing. When I was watching, I'm like, why not just put some turrets all around, some like from Aliens, you know, and just you could just mow people down. Granted, they can maybe take them out, but that would be so much harder. Like there are so many other things.
Or you could like, if you could like push a button and have like an electrified fence.
Yes, yeah.
Or all these things that would have made this movie. Like I said, if they had all just went in the basement and covered all the exits with like firearms, but then again, I guess you could just caught the house on fire or something. But you know,
my dad, they have a
purge proof.
Essentially, yeah. I can't remember what it's called, but it's for storms and stuff. It's a safety room, I believe.
Yeah.
It's built underneath the porch of his house. They had it built with the house, and all the walls are concrete, and then it has a steel door.
Yeah.
So even if it burns, no fire can get in there because it's all concrete all the way around, even the ceiling. So it's like, you know, you get one of those and you
put some oxygen tanks in there in case you want to run low on oxygen.
Yeah.
Or if you need to blow somebody up, you can just shoot the tanks of oxygen.
Or the flip side to all this is, if you got the money to spend freaking thousands upon thousands of dollars to go on vacation, unless they've outlawed, like, but see, we'll get to that with the later movies, but like, so the first movie I thought was, you know,
interesting.
The concept behind it was interesting. The execution left something to be wanted because, like I said, the characters
it was just
made
kind
very
of
dumb decisions.
Yeah, it was just a rehash of many home invasion movies.
It was like, a home invasion mixed with a zombie film. I mean, it was essentially like a zombie film too, where this family is on the inside protecting their house from other people, and two, they have somebody on the inside that they're not sure if they can trust, or you know what I mean. There's kind of the internal drama too with even the boyfriend and stuff. So it kind of has that roots and that way to build a drama from those genres, but then it's built on a whole nother concept.
Yeah. I just remember when this movie, the original Purge, came out, I was like, oh, Ethan Hawke's coming back. I'll had to check it out. It was one of the main draws to me was the movie seeing Ethan Hawke, because at one point in time he was a rather...
Well, he was in that with Blumhouse, and then he was in Sinister. So he
that's all relatively in a short period of time too.
I years back.
Yeah, it seems like it anyway. But
yeah, and
it wasn't like I didn't come out of the movie like hating it. It was just, you know, like it to me. It had interesting concepts, but kind of like I think we all kind of just a run the mill home invasion.
If the sequels were just more of that, they would. I don't think I would have been interested.
No,
but when we talk about Purge Anarchy.
Yeah, so Anarchy to me was a huge step up from the first film.
Oh, can I say something real quick? It was almost like the Punisher film that a lot of people would make, because like Frank Grillo kind of looks like.
Yes, that's what I was.
And this is something that it was something that William told me, and I completely agree with him. It's like, to me, this almost feels like a Punisher movie to a certain degree.
I mean, like, because this one, so the Purge Anarchy is, you know, it is a bigger world, a little bit bigger budget. You know, the first one was all inside of a house and people attacking the house. Purge Anarchy is about people out in the city who get stranded during the purge, or who are attacked and have to like hit the street and try to get to safety. And you have Frank Grillo's character Leo, who, you know, kind of has this nebulous backstory at the beginning of, you know, he's going to go out on the purge night, and he's got like an armored car and a bunch of weapons, and he seems like he's going to go do something. And it's because a drunk driver had hit and killed his child prior to that. So he was going to go and kill the guy that hit his kid. And he goes out, and then he runs into people that need that need help to survive. So he helps them, and, you know, sees the purge, and, you know, has to get involved in all that.
There's the purge.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there it is. There is Purge. I must run. But it was much more of like, so the first film was a home invasion slasher type movie. The sequel was more of an open world, like Warriors or even Escape from New York.
It felt more
Yeah,
like an
Escape
Escape
from
to New York.
Yeah.
So it felt like, you know, the only thing I'll say is about Anarchy and Election Year is like, what would 80s John Carpenter have done with this? But, you know, but as is, they were, you know, they were enjoyable. Like Anarchy I enjoyed, and I thought it was a fun movie, and, you know, didn't go super deep with it. Had a little bit of political statement, you know, about the fact like, oh, the government's kind of going after low income people just to knock them out so that the economy can flourish and all this stuff. So there was like a little bit of thinly veiled stuff like that.
Which I like that they kind of bring in more commentary on each film. Like the first one is about, you know, the rich upper class and how he's worried about himself and kind of the decisions to make. Like they keep kind of building on that, and it's more interesting. I thought originally it was the films were going to be just a reason for people to be afraid to get murdered.
Yeah.
And I thought that's all it was. And that's why I didn't watch that first one. I thought, okay, maybe I heard they're all right, but whatever. And I thought that's all it was. But I feel like there's enough there, even though the execution isn't good, that it's more interesting and has some personality to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think too the political commentary in these movies is all it's not subtle. It's pretty.
No, yeah.
It was more subtle in the second. It still wasn't very subtle, but in the third one, it's not even thinly veiled. It's just there.
I mean, the third one has a different type of ending, but it's similar to the ending of the second one in some degree. But the second one, there's like a what was it when aren't people paying to
The extremely rich are paying
so in the
like
Purge
lower level income people to capture people to bring them to kill.
Yes. So I mean, that's
There's
already
a purge party of like elites who are wealthy people who are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars.
See,
and they have a group that goes out and rounds people up and brings them in so they can just go up and execute them in a almost
Safe.
like laser blaze type arena where they have weapons.
This is almost kind of like the adult version of the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
But just like instead of just children, it's everybody.
Yeah, and it's a class thing. I was hoping that it was also. I thought the funnier thing was if it was a charity auction.
Yeah.
Like they were using that money for charity. You know what I mean? Because sometimes very rich people they've even involved a lot of charities, but then they may be like corrupt people. And I thought that would have been a funnier thing to do to make it seem like they were all high and mighty. But they were using it was
This
their
is for
own,
the children.
Yeah.
Now use a shotgun and blow his face off.
Well, they do mention in the third one, they do name check like the NRA and people.
Yes, which I'm surprised. And they have one of the guys has does it say white power on his back? My wife said
it's got swastikas and white power.
And then he has the Confederate flag on him. Like they very much point that stuff out. But that second one too, the Punisher type character, that's exactly what I thought. And I got thinking, I want to see a crossover comic of like DC and Marvel characters on Purge night. Can you imagine Batman going out or like, you know what I mean?
Well,
like
that'd actually
Spider-Man, like that would be like, and that's the thing about this film. It's so, this concept, it's just so wide. You could do so many fun things.
And it's really like, so the idea that the government would have one night of sanctioned crime. I mean, when you break it down, it's like, okay, so the fact they have one night of sanctioned crime means that everyone just gets most of that out of their system. Because like in those movies, like crime's at an all-time low, unemployment's at an all-time low, the economy's booming and everybody's doing well. Theoretically, because the Purge allows everyone to purge all of their, inner demons on that one night. And also the subtext is they get to eliminate all the low-income people that are on government assistance, so they have to spend a lot less money on welfare and healthcare and stuff.
But that isn't their outright statement. That's just kind of
That's what they do during it.
Yes.
So that's
that's
essentially
the end goal.
So, but then you're led to believe, okay, like in that universe, the fact that you can purge means that people don't commit crimes most of the rest of the year, which I find hard to believe. But it's not that hard to see a future where they would initiate something like that, because there are some people in this country who would probably welcome it. The people in like stockpiles of like military grade weapons would probably be okay if you were to initiate that type of night.
They would welcome the challenge too. Not to say necessarily to kill, but they would welcome the challenge,
I think of like the guys from Trimmer is what I'm thinking about. That guy. It's like
another thing too, like, I'm talking about the concept. I was listening to a screenwriting podcast and they were talking about I guess coming up with ideas and worlds, and they said the best thing to do is to create kind of an idea that makes it where the things that happen in your film can only happen in your film. So they brought up like the Lego movie. Like, okay, well, we're making a movie about Legos. What is like a threat that can only be in a Lego movie? Well, the ultimate thing is if Lego blocks can't move around, so glue is the ultimate weapon.
Yeah.
And that movie has like the super weapon as being like the nuclear device is like a stick of super glue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're like, think of concepts, or they talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean where the pirates are like, I guess, zombies in the Moonlight, which I've never seen those films.
Yeah, so they have a curse that makes them essentially zombies, and in the Moonlight you can see their true form.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this film is. It has its own idea where it's like it has such a good core concept that it can be extrapolated many times and kind of pull out 1,000 different stories.
Yeah,
and there's really not, we were talking about like horror not being what it used to be. There's really not any other films I feel like that do this an original concept as successfully as this franchise has done, because Sinister movies, the Conjuring, they're all just kind of like variations of ghost stories or little concepts, or like The Ring, that's another one that has like a little bit of a concept too, But this is like, I feel like such a wide idea.
Well, yeah, and like it kind of took so many different ideas together, and like we were talking about, I think they did a really good idea by changing up the way they did it, because going into the bigger world and getting to see everything made it a lot more interesting, made it deeper. And then they have, the second one had quite a bit of social commentary, but it was, kind of hidden a little bit more than the third. But it just gave you a lot of interesting concepts. And then they picked a good lead character. And they tend to have, in the two of the movies, the most recent, like they have stronger characters all around in it.
Yeah, I feel like the characters got better as each film goes on.
So, I think so. The Anarchy. You don't have to have seen the first Purge really to watch Anarchy and Election Year. But I think Anarchy and Election Year are huge steps up from the first one.
And you don't really even have to, because I had seen the first Purge. I had not seen Anarchy before I saw the Election Year. If you have not seen Anarchy, you don't necessarily have to see it. It does have one continuing character from it, but he was kind of you don't really know much about him, even from the second one. Like, he had very few lines, and he never really even...
Just, just one last thing on the second one before we move on to discussing Election Year. I think that when the all the wealthy people were collecting up the people to be slaughtered in their little private hunt, where they all got to choose like high-powered rifles and shotguns and stuff. They had night vision goggles in like a dark room. They might have wanted to do a second of background research on the people they rounded up. It's like, oh, this dude has like special forces experiences, like a former cop, and he looked pretty grizzled. Let's maybe not. Let's just kill him right now.
Yeah, and then they fuck everybody up.
Yeah, because of course, he's a highly skilled killer, or able to defend himself and takes people out, but. So, like, the one thing, so now we're moving into Election Year, and we'll hold off any heavy spoilers till the very end. But one thing I could see as a slight criticism of Election Year is it's almost the same film as the second one, really, where people get stranded and have to be transported by the character Leo to safety.
Yeah.
And, like...
Except...
I don't want to spoil, like, the very ending, but, like, a similar number of main characters from the core cast get killed in both movies.
Yeah.
And...
Watching this and the end of this third film, I was thinking, okay, this is kind of, I feel like the fourth film, they can't do this again. I think it was fine in the third one that it was kind of similar to that second one because there was just so much to do, but they really need to kind of spin the angle on it. But I think they set up to spin the angle on that for this film, though, by the end of it.
But I think, too, they do a fourth. It'd be kind of nice if they... As much as I like Leo's character, I don't know if it would be necessary to have him in the next one.
I think you need to kind of move on. And two, like, so
they have had a through line through each film. That's one consistent thing. It's all been very convenient that they've all been, or a lot of coincidences. Like, oh, this character's shown up here, but it's created a through line through all these stories.
The one character that was in all the movies was Bishop, who was the person they let into their house in the first film that was being chased down by the Purgers. And then he showed up in the end of the second film as part of like a resistance force who's against the Purge that kind of saved the main characters. And then he's, the leader of that group in the third film. And so he's the one recurring character who's been in all three films. And then the character of Leo was in two films. And, like I said, like with the first and second one, there was political commentary, but it was more like they would specifically, in the second one, they specifically pointed out like a few things like, oh, the government has to go out and help thin the herd a little bit because enough people aren't purging. So there's like that, but in the third one, it's even more overt. Like there's the NFFA, who's like the group, who's essentially the NRA, even though they name check the NRA, is a group that's like pro-purge. And there's like a minister who is very pro-purge who is running. And then there's the Senator Charlie, who's the female lead.
Who's an independent.
Yeah, and her family was killed by the Purge, 18 years prior. So she wants to end the Purge if she gets elected to be president. So going into the Purge, they changed the rules for the first time ever so that any politician, regardless of their status, is able to be killed during the Purge, essentially so they can just take her out before
again, just
the
like
election.
Just like they're using it to like get rid of lower class citizens.
Yeah.
They're using it they're bending the rules to their advantage and kind of creating a situation where they can take care of her.
The issue I had with this, I mean, not the only issue, but there was some acting stuff that wasn't very good in it. which kind of took me out of it a few times. You know, like
Are you talking about the candy bar girl?
the candy bar girl was one of them,
She hams it up. She
and the
hams it
leader
up.
of like the NFFFARAQ or whatever it was, like he was kind of his. I don't know if it was just his voice or if he's hamming it up, but like at the very beginning, that was kind of took me out of it a little bit.
Yeah, so so like basically in this film, the idea is that like we've set up there's the Purge. They've made it so that you can go after anybody regardless of their political standing. So it's Senator Charlie Roan and Leo, who's from the prior films. They get attacked. They have to hit the streets and try to escape, and they run into Joe and his helper Marcos. And Joe owns a deli, like a corner shop, and like the movie kind of cuts back and forth between them and the senator. And it's like
just like the second film, it's like all these different storylines.
It's a
which
little
is cool because it keeps it interesting.
It's a
when they
little
all
bit
come together.
It's a little bit tonally different because I've seen a few people point out like there's one character who's like a patron of the deli who talks about like the only thing he's interested in is pussy and waffles. So you have like these kind of like weird jokes.
Yeah.
And the fact that like we talked about, there's some teens that are they come into the shop and they try to steal a candy bar and they get caught. You have to give it back, and that really angers one of them. Like angers her so much
That you know she's going to come back and purge.
that she targets that during the Purge. And like I saw some people like complaining, it's like, oh, it's just over a candy bar. It's like, well, no, it wasn't a candy bar. It's because like he was an authority figure who made her back down. And then when it was the Purge day, she got to push back against that authority figure and try to get her revenge, just not because of a candy bar, just because he told her no.
Yeah.
And so you have those like threads.
But it was still hilarious because she's just like, I'm getting my candy. And it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah,
And
it's like-
I kind of, like, it's really dumb, but at the same time, this film kind of has fun being really stupid.
That part kind of reminded me. It's not the same, but it kind of reminds me of the Warriors a little bit.
Yes, yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Like the whole, like
The
characters
ridiculousness.
are really dressed
Yeah.
up. And I was thinking too, the thing that would have helped all these films if they had some larger than life characters, because all the actors have been fine.
Yeah.
If they had some larger than life characters, like kind of like They Live, you know, like Keith David and Roddy Piper. If they had like those type of characters in here. Because even the end of They Live isn't good.
Yeah.
But the film is great because of them and kind of the concept of it. Like if they would have had something like that to kind of anchor these films, they would have been like great.
Too, if you think back to like Escape from New York, you know, of course you have Snake
Yes,
Plissken, you have the Duke and the Brain and Adrian Barbeau and you know all these sub characters.
Great characters, yeah.
So like
These have the goofy masks through every one. They're kind of dumb, but I feel like they're like having fun with it in a dumb way by the third film, and it's kind of okay.
in the third film, it's an election year. They also make it like a plot point that they're murder tourists, so people who come from foreign countries to be able to kill Americans during the Purge.
Yeah.
And then a group of those murder tourists are dressed in all like patriotic outfits like Uncle Sam and the Statue of Liberty. So, of course, if you've seen the trailers or the pictures, you've seen like those costumes. And like they show up. So you have some like ridiculous stuff like that. And like we mentioned, like the teenagers who are coming back to just try to attack the deli. Like they're driving around in Toyota Priuses that have a bunch of Christmas lights on them. And to me, that just makes you a huge target for anyone to take you out.
I got thinking, I'm like, that's how the audience members can easily see this car coming down the street. They put lights all over it in the dark, and it stands out.
Yeah, but in real life, if you're like an actually heavily armed person, it's like, oh, you can just
But they themselves were also heavily armed.
Yeah, but if they're driving around their Prius, which has no armor, you can easily destroy that car and everyone in it from a distance.
Yeah, but
I think the Purge
the area they were in didn't seem that busy.
But it's also the fact that the movie had a $10 million budget, which is a pretty decent budget, but for a movie that scope, it's relatively low, and that shows up in some of it. Like, one thing I did enjoy is the movie seemed to be mostly lit by the environmental lighting, which kind of gave it a unique, kind of grainy look, which I liked. But there were some times, like, I know me and Derek had discussed, there were, like, some scenes with ADR, which is, like, they record the additional dialogue and added in.
Some of it was, like, it was just so obvious.
Typically in movies or TV shows, if you watch Arrested Development, there's, like, they always, like, shoot over the shoulder, so the actor's not actually moving their mouth, they're just kind of nodding. And then you see that a lot on TV and movies just a way to save time. So they have to shoot the back and forth scenes a bunch. But in this movie, there's a couple times they do that, and it's, like, people, like, wide shots from the front giving speeches. And then like their mouths aren't moving when these speeches are happening, and it's like that's kind of noticeable. They did that like 2 or 3 times, like in big shots
and big
I
important
noticed it
scenes
once,
in the
and
movie.
I think Nicole noticed it once.
But it's, I think it was also just because it's a low budget movie. And there's like some shots toward the end. Like I was telling them, there's like one scene with like a character that's like this really kind of blurry, out of focus, really bad looking shot for no reason.
For some reason.
Yeah, I noticed it.
Spoilers we can talk about where it's
But-
at.
But I don't know if it was on purpose or not.
I think what happened was I think this movie, they probably had like a pretty tight time frame and budget, and they just didn't reshoot anything. So some of the stuff they had, they just had to work with, what they had. Which, like, we're doing that short film Hazard, and we've got some scenes we're not super happy with, so we're going to go back and do some reshoots. But, we have time to do that. On a movie like this, they probably had a pretty tight budget and timeline and didn't get to do reshoots or something is the only way I can think of. They had some of those scenes end up in there. But, so you had a few things like that, but that's just because they had, like, a big scope intended with a relatively modest budget. But I think, overall, I think they achieved quite a bit with the money they had.
It's funny that you said that this reminds you of Escape from New York, because this is a very similar plot almost to Escape
Well, I
from
think
New
that
York.
too, like I've seen some people point out, like, so if the Purge movies are just people trying to survive the night every single time, that's going to get old.
Yeah.
You need to have an objective and something greater than that in this. And this is trying to protect a senator who wants to end the Purge if elected president. Like, if they,
I mean, the timing of this movie, like, granted, it was planned, but, being an election year, being that everything's going on, and you know what I mean? Like, this is a film that's coming out at the right exact time. And it's, like, good that this is the third one because it was a good twist on kind of the premise and
4th of
stuff.
July
Like,
weekend.
yeah, like, they, props on them for looking ahead and kind of thinking about this in the bigger picture.
And too, like, we're not going to dive too much in the politics of it, but I saw some different reviews. I saw, like, the review Bloody Disgusting had of this film. They discussed, like, oh, it's a glimpse of what a Trump presidency would look like. And then, like, a lot of the comments were all just about that and not about the movie itself. And it's like, I don't know that's necessarily any one candidate. It's just there are a lot of people in the U.S. who are very bloodthirsty, and, like, this isn't really about gun rights or anything like that. It's more just about people using violence as a way to try to satiate people and control them, while at the same time, like, thinning out the herd and reducing the amount of population is deemed undesirable.
Or saying one thing, pretending you have one idea or reason for kind of preaching something, but
doing
on
it
the
for
other side,
alter-
there's really another layer to it of the real reason why you want to do it, and that's kind of the bigger, and I guess broader.
And there's some
idea.
stuff towards the end, I don't want to get into spoilers, that kind of reminded me more of like the BioShock game series a little bit, with like some of the religious stuff they talked about.
Well, I think,
that's the thing, they dive into this. They did a little bit of political, touching on political things in the second film, but the third one, they dive into religion too. Like they kind of start really going at it.
But like I said, like there's not a subtle approach to this. It's all very like, here it is. It's sort of beating you over the head with it.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's over the top movie too, so it works for this tone, I think.
I think what happens is with this, it's like an exploitation style, like event, like action horror film. And the fact that they have the political elements in it raises the bar for people who are reviewing it who aren't horror or genre fans, who then look at it with a much more critical eye than if it was just like a fun exploitation flick.
Yeah.
The fact that it has any political ambition at all makes a lot of people probably grade it harder, because I saw like the review from NPR that they had earlier, and it was a pretty harsh review that was negative on it. And I think that it's not like super smart enough to, pass muster with a lot of like national critics and stuff, because it's really just a B movie that has the political subtext and stuff is like a reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
But,
And he's thrown in some jabs there, but it's like,
but at the same time, like, one of my favorite movies of all time, Escape from New York, it's not exactly, layered and deep and worthy of discussion. I mean, it's, anti-authoritarian and kind of like early cyberpunk type stuff, but, this kind of follows in that tradition and touches on a lot of different topics, but, it has enough action in it. I will say that there's not a ton of like gory action horror in this one. It's more of like,
there
action
actually
and,
wasn't in either of them. I'd say either of them because this style was different than the first.
Yeah.
The first one there wasn't, and this was rated R, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it had to have been. Yeah, because there's one scene that
I mean, there's not a lot. It's not gratuitous, but I mean, there's people getting run over by cars,
Yeah.
a guillotine being used
Yeah,
on somebody,
yeah.
like people on fire. Like there's some stuff. Yeah, they're lighting homeless people on fire. Like there's some stuff in it,
Yeah.
but it's not Saw.
It's more of it's rated R because the culmination of gore throughout the film, the different scenes, is not because there's like intense scenes of just like people getting their stomach cut open and choked with their own organs.
Which I like. This is the tone I like for gore. It doesn't like fetishize it.
No,
it's just
There is one scene that is pretty brutal, and it happens at the Pussy and Waffle place, but we'll get into that.
Well, too, like one thing with the with not so much the first film, but the first film and like kind of like the second and third one, they all feel like the main cast is relatively safe for most of the film. Even though they're in peril, it feels like they're mostly safe for most of it. And like so the character of Leo, like at the end of the second film, he gets shot quite a few times and lives. I thought it was more than that.
No, he got shot twice.
Because the guy shot him a few times, didn't he? I thought he shot him
I was
more than
watching this
twice.
morning. It was twice.
Well, I know he gets shot in that, and then in this he gets a little bit gets beaten up a little bit.
There's a guy that looks just like what was his name? It's Michael Anthony Hall or whatever.
Yeah,
it's not him.
It's
but
not
it
Michael
looks
Anthony Hall. But
so much like him. Did anybody else think that?
I
they saw
didn't
it?
think about that, but yeah, you're
he
right.
looks
the fact
so
that
much like
me
him.
and Derek saw this at the same time, and he pointed it out, and I was like, "What's not him?" And he's like, "Oh, it's him. I bet it's him." I'm like,
It
"No, it's
had.
not
I mean,
him."
this is like his doppelganger. It looks so much alike. I was like, it has to be him but then it wasn't. It
Okay,
was
Yeah.
somebody
so
else.
one thing during this film, I think it was during the second one I was watching it, I saw somebody skating on the street.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what are some of the lamest Purge activities, like skating in front of a no skateboarding sign? Like, or like what other, like you think about all the industries that we built around this, like I'm sure there will be some people that would have like warehouses where you could go have sex with animals for money. You know what I mean? What would like come out of this?
Yeah,
like there's so many different things. Like this would be ripe for a comic book or like a TV series. Or like you could even do one about like maybe a documentary crew making a documentary on it. And that could be like a found footage episode.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many different angles you could go with it.
the tact the movie kind of takes, or the series kind of takes, is like the rich use the purge as a way to thin out the poor. What if the poor use the purge as a way to live out their fantasies of being wealthy and like break into the high end restaurants and go steal Ferraris and Lamborghinis and high end boats and all this stuff? But like the thing is, you gotta be done by 7 a.m. the next morning or you get arrested, because it's a 12-hour period.
Like this could easily transform into a TV show, I think.
Yeah, just like there's a lot of potential for things to do with it. But like I said, I think if you keep doing like, oh, it's just these people are trying to scurry throughout the city and survive. Like I think you would need to change locations and change objectives. Like somebody uses the purge as a time to try to, like some organized crime type thing. They're trying to transport a large amount of money or drugs or something during the purge.
Yes, yeah.
So you give like objectives and things like that to play out during it, because the fact that, so this movie we're recording on July 4th, which is Monday after the weekend. And, Friday through Sunday, the purge election year made like a little over $30 million, which is a pretty good sum and puts it on par with the second one. And then, worldwide, it should make over $100 million at the end of its run, I would think, based on a $10 million budget, which is a pretty solid profit. They're going to make more of these, I would have to think. And there's a lot of things you could do with it. There's
companies could do like corporate espionage during these times. Like there could be big corporate wars where there is sabotage other companies, things that are normally legal.
And then it's like, like you said, that like it'll be interesting to see what industry it propped up around that. Because like in the movie they mentioned like the NRA. It's like, so what would like the gun stores and the gun lobby, like what would all that be like in this world?
Massive sales right before Purge week.
And like, are all the gun stores so super heavily fortified you can't break in?
Yeah.
Because you would think that'd be the first place you would go is to steal a bunch of guns, but you can't use like high explosives. And then, you have to think like, would people be stealing helicopters and hijacking planes, or why wouldn't anybody that had the money just go on vacation somewhere else?
I would just probably move out of the country, because that would be just an ideal of the way the country's going. Even if it was like, oh, crime is down, it's like, I don't want to live here.
Yeah, I don't want to die because somebody can come in and just like rape and murder my family. So it's like I guess like you could just have Ethan Hawke's company fortify your house, and then just go on vacation around that week, and then just come back, and then hopefully your house is still standing.
But they even bring up Purge insurance on here too.
Purge
They
insurance.
touch on a lot of different things that pop up, but like it's just so wide. Like there's no way they could, even tap into, a 100th of what all could be explored through this concept.
Yeah, because like the insurance is literally like the character Joe gets a phone call, and he's like, "What? blah blah blah, I can't afford that, and his Purge insurance went up like thousands of % the day of the Purge.
I think he said it went like $5,000 or something.
I thought he said it was like thousands of %.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, ironically, there are instances of insurance going way up on people like right before big things, but you know, that's the level of subtlety and the level of nuance it handles a lot of that with. So it has a lot of these topics that it touches on. It doesn't dive super deep into any of them, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, I thought this was I enjoyed the movie and I found it to be entertaining. It's not like deep satire of anything. It's, you know, just taking some different ideas and putting them together into like a exploitation horror action film that's, you know, much heavier on the action than on the horror side from the second two films. So
there's a couple jump scares because there were people jumping and screaming in the theater, and somebody behind us spilled like almost all their popcorn at one point too. Like, there's not a lot. But there's a couple sprinkled throughout. Like there's a good rhythm to this film, I think.
And like when Derek and I saw this, we saw it like at the earliest screening Saturday.
There wasn't many people
so
there.
We were the only ones in there, and then like 5 or 6 other people filtered in. But usually there's not a huge crowd at 11 a.m. for like horror action films.
Yeah, just that too, but it was also like Saturday before the 4th, and you know, I feel like not many things would have been that busy anyway.
It's funny that, you know, so the BFG was a Steven Spielberg film that had like a $140 million budget, and the Purge election year had a $10 million budget, and it outgrossed it in its opening weekend, and it'll likely outgross it in the U.S. for its run. Now, that movie, the BFG, will probably make more worldwide.
Yeah.
But, you know...
Time for Spielberg to go back to horror, make Jaws 6.
But, or 19, he needs to get to 19, like Back to the Future predicted. But, you know, like, more movies like this, you know, take a little bit of high-minded ideas and concepts and then filter it into an achievable, lower-budget movie. I think that's, like, a good trend. Now, like, if you don't love these movies, that's fine, but I think that, you know, more stuff in this vein, to me, would be entertaining.
Yeah, I'm not huge on the ghost stuff, and that's what's popular right now.
Like, I would rather
kind of appreciate this more than I even would have.
Well, because, too, I think it's, like you said, there's just so much they could do with it, and it just is an interesting take on it, because, like, you're always, I think each movie, is it taking places in different cities in each one?
Well, this one was in D.C.
Yeah, but I don't know.
The prior one, I don't think they really said where they were.
Yeah, but it wasn't in D.C. in the prior one. And in the first one, I don't know where Ethan Hawke... That one just took place in the house.
First and second were almost the same, just because that character, you know, there's in them both. But James DeMonico was a writer-director, and he's wrote and directed all 3 of these. So props on him for being able to... And Blumhouse for giving him control of this and letting him be the director and writer on all these.
Well, the last two, like, wasn't Platinum Dunes was a producer, so Michael Bay's production company does all horror remakes.
Yeah.
So I'd hope, like, it didn't seem like they had much creative input because there wasn't like super shiny spectacle.
One thing I want to say
shots of
too,
women.
That which is it? Because you got The Conjuring. What's the other one?
Sinister, Insidious.
Insidious, I think, has gotten better 1 through 3. Like, I enjoyed 3 the most out of all of them.
Well, I think most people would say Insidious Chapter 2 was the worst. So it's 1. Like, I think 1's still probably the best.
That's not the point. The point is I still think like it was the third one was the strongest. I don't know if election year was
that's arguable.
I think so. That's my opinion.
I think the third one's the strongest.
Yeah.
Too.
But anyway, the Purge election year is a movie that I think that I don't know if it's any stronger than the second, but it's certainly not any weaker. You know?
I think that it's
and I think sometimes it's one of those things where people complain about like, you know, everything's sequels now, and not that this is a completely original movie, and while it is a sequel, it's still kind of nice to see a movie be at the third one and not feel like it just wore out.
Excessive. Yeah,
not like it was rolled wet and hung up.
Things further in the right ways.
It's not franchise fatigue where they're just pumping it out just to knock out a super cheap sequel quickly to make money.
It doesn't feel like kind of a typical rehash of the same
and they
thing.
didn't give it $100 million budget and say go balls. You know,
but I would rather see a 4th Purge film than a Escape from New York remake because I think you could I think this one had a feeling more like that. Like
it was kind of the similar.
There's like not really an anti-hero because the character of Leo in this is more of an outright hero, towards the second film he was more of an anti-hero. But you have kind of like an anti-hero type character trying to help somebody, you know, survive or achieve a goal or something like that.
They just need to make a crossover movie. The Purge hits Gotham, and Batman has to achieve.
That would actually be really
imagine how awesome that would be.
Or just imagine if they had the Punisher from the Netflix Marvel series team up with Leo from the Purge film, and then they had like all these weapons, and they were just going around and like if the thing is with the Punisher though, if the Purge was real, the Punisher would probably start out by taking out like criminal element, and then eventually turn his sights more global.
Yeah,
but like it's ripe for possibility. And we aren't like, this movie was about the election and the senator trying to survive and end the purge if she survives and wins it, whatever. So we'll kind of save all that discussion for the spoilers. But yeah, I mean, like even if they end the purge, there's still ample room for them to address future stories.
Well, yeah, that too. Or they could always kind of, like I said, I think where it ended, I don't know if I necessarily, as much as I like Frank Grillo as that character, I don't know if I want to see him come back, because then the fear is, well, you're either going to get more diehardish where he's just completely untouchable, or you're going to have to kill him.
And I think he's okay, but I don't love him. Like I said, he's not like a Roddy Piper. He's not like
I liked him a lot.
I liked him all right, but 2 movies of him, I want to see them kind of going.
Well, I think my thing too is I like Frank Grillo, so it's like I think
because he was Crossbones.
Not just that, just like some of the stuff that he's
Marvel.
done in his personal life is like kind of. I watched a bunch of. It was kind of funny. He just seems like a wild person.
What kind of stuff has he done?
I don't know, like goes out and gets in bar fights and beats the hell. And it's just funny because like
He's like 50 years old.
Yeah, he's like 50 years old, but he still gets in like fights and stuff. Because I saw a thing where they done, but anyway.
So I guess we can kind of wrap up our thoughts on this and then go into spoilers. So this movie, if you didn't enjoy the first one, I think you can still enjoy this one.
Oh yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to have seen the prior 2 films to watch this one. I think you get a little bit more out of it if you watch the second film and then this one.
Yeah, the first one you don't really have
The
to
first
watch.
one doesn't really connect to it that much, aside from one character who's kind of a minor part in the first one.
And it's all takes
And then it's
part
all
on the
kind
Purge
of...
night.
And, and I don't think that first one, just because it's all in a house, it wasn't like I know a lot of people when the second one came out, they said this is what you wanted the Purge to be, and I get that, but I think going into the first one, I knew the second one was out, the third one, I knew I was going to get that like wider scope of the Purge. So when I went in to watch the first one, I was happy that I was like, I'm totally fine that it's inside of one house, because I get to see more of an intimate, I guess, view of this situation. And I think it's like great that it didn't start out like that second one or third one, because then you would have like
in the first film, I just like, if you read the comments or the reviews, the user reviews on IMDb, there are some people who are just savagely hating on that movie, and they point out a lot of things like, the family.
there's some dumb things about it.
If the family had if the daughter stopped just hiding throughout the house and stayed with the parents, right there, that stops a lot of the drama. If the son hadn't, doesn't go and hide throughout the house, that stops drama. And then you just have, people in all these movies suffer to some extent from your main characters are in a dire situation. They're about to be killed. The killer, they recite like the little Purge statement about like, oh, now we or like whatever. It's kind of like the Pledge of Allegiance, but like about purging. So everyone like has to say that before they purge. And in every movie, there's a time where the main characters are about to be taken out, and then somebody saves them at the last second because they linger too long. Like the camera will linger too long, and the people about to kill them, and then somebody comes from off screen and saves everyone. And that happens in all 3 films, which kind of cheapens it a little bit. But I guess it's going for the element of surprise. So like there's a few things like that I wish they had kind of stopped doing. But overall, Election Year I thought was a fun exploitation film that, like I said, it's just smart enough to not just be a standard low fare action film, but it's not high-minded enough to gain the approval of mainstream like critics. But I enjoyed it and thought it was fun.
It doesn't take itself too seriously. So
there's a scene set to Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA.
Yes,
so that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. What'd you think about it, Derek, overall?
I really enjoyed it. Like, because I hadn't saw Anarchy before I saw this. So having just saw the first and this one, I really enjoyed the direction of it. I liked Frank Grillo in it. I liked a lot of the stuff about this one. But, to me, kind of like William said, it felt more like almost an Escape to New York a little bit, because it had very similar plot almost. I really enjoyed it.
Somebody had to escort like somebody who's wanting to be president or is president through a war zone, and
it just a very interesting, like you said, there's so many different ways you go. Like you said, I would love to see them do like a Marvel DC crossover.
Even
with
just a
it.
comic book.
Yeah,
You
just
know
a
what I
comic.
mean?
Yeah, I would just be happy because a comic book gives a
that's
little more
what
free
would happen.
range. Yeah, but it'd be
Yeah.
awesome
Well,
just to
that's
see
not
that.
going to happen. But,
I don't know. They did Marvel Zombies, and
that was like an offshoot comic that Marvel owned. They're not going to lend their characters to this
They lended to zombies.
low, but that wasn't in the comics.
It's
They
poop.
They wouldn't make a Walking Dead Marvel crossover show or
No,
something.
but I'm saying I could definitely see them maybe do. I don't know. They've done a lot of stuff.
But like, I don't know if this movie, like this series, I don't think they would benefit, or if it would be negatively impacted if they gave them a larger budget,
No,
for
no,
a bigger scope.
I think that this is like the largest budget they've had at 10
Well, I think
million.
the second and third one had close to the same amount of budget.
I don't
10.
think that this movie benefits. I think it would be detrimental to give them a $50 million budget. Or you guys think, because kind of like we were talking about with Deadpool before, like it is what it is. The budget works fine. Once you get more money, then you have to do more stuff. And I like
you have to make more money.
Yeah.
Like it could be just the end of the franchise.
Yeah, and I like a movie because, like, while this one had a lot more at stake than maybe the first two, it still wasn't like, I feel like if you give them $50 million budget, somebody's going to hijack a nuke and they're going to turn it into Batman 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want
And
anything
wanna
like
see
that.
That's
You need to
not
have
fun.
you need to have smaller stakes.
And Tom Cruise is going to be in it, and I just don't want that.
So, Sean,
Yeah, so I really liked it. I feel like this one has more of an identity than the second one, even though they're kind of similar in concepts.
Yeah.
Like I said, I liked the first one. Second one, I liked as well. And I think the third one I probably liked the most. I feel
Yeah, I
like the
think I did too.
personality of the films have kind of grown to more of my taste as they went along. Like the
Yeah.
first one wasn't dry, but it wasn't super playful. And the mask, honestly, the mask kind of turned me off from even watching this because I thought it was just another, they had like just the dumb mask. You know what I mean? That's
like
in
the
a lot of films.
strangers and like all that type of stuff.
So I thought, okay, well, it's just a reason to kill people with weird masks. That's what it seemed like. And
Like
it's
your
not,
next is like a much better home invasion film than the Purge.
yeah, and it's not that at all, really. So by the third one, they kind of the masks are almost, I feel like, seen as being a little goofy in it.
Yeah.
and I don't know. I feel like it's just more self-aware, and it started out pretty self-aware, but I really like the tone of the third one.
Yeah.
And I feel like just having the more substantial storyline that's still, like you said, not world ending, but there's more consequences to it
Yeah.
because she is a central character to the legacy of the Purge,
Yeah.
that because she wants to end it. And yeah, there's a lot of dumb things throughout all these films, but it's one of those things where the film as a whole makes up for all those little things.
Yeah, I
I
think
believe
so.
for sure. And I appreciate that it's not another ghost movie franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the third one, and I'm ready for a fourth one if it kind of goes in the direction
Yeah.
they tease at the end of this film.
I just hope that if they do a fourth
Because they need to
one,
change it
yeah,
up,
I just think, like, I like the story arc they've done. I like the characters, but I don't want to just completely wear it out. You know, step
Like,
into
I mean,
and it
give
sounds
somebody
like they're going in a smart direction.
Yeah.
But they're not
Like I
gonna
would be fine with them just leaving this as is and leaving it where it ended and
Yes,
doing
yeah,
something
me
new.
too.
But
Yeah.
this made enough money. I don't think they're going to be able to resist the urge. But
the urge to purge.
yeah.
But before we move into spoilers here, if you're enjoying the podcast, you can do us a huge favor and go out to iTunes and leave a review, because that's the most important place for there to be reviews of the podcast, because it helps other people find them and helps you end up in the new and noteworthy sections and helps you climb the charts. So that's a huge favor if you listen to us via iTunes. If you're listening to us in other locations, you can always leave a comment or send us an email at podcast@housebyvideostore.com. You can find all the work we're doing at our website, housebyvideostore.com, where we have links to all of our social media accounts. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And then we also are on Vine, Vimeo, and we have a Snapchat we haven't really done much with because we're not 18-year-olds, but we do have one. But so you can find all the stuff we're doing there. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid.
You can find me on Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter at MetaWorldDerek.
And I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter. Instagram, Sean2D2.
So
The Instagrams.
So now it's time for some spoilers for the Purge election year. And one thing I think is kind of funny in retrospect is they don't really touch on or even mention social media existing in this universe. Because I think in real life, if people were purging, they would probably be posting it all over Instagram and Facebook.
One thing is,
or
how
would
many,
they? Because they're killing people.
Yeah, I think they wear the mask to kind of hide the fact that, so it won't bleed over into their personal life.
It's kind of like it's something that's a right, but it's something that maybe people seem as being shameful to.
So,
but my thing is with the social media thing, I'm glad they didn't do that because I really hate movies. Because when they show I don't I don't want to see somebody videotape a murder.
But you know those teens when they're trying to get into that deli would have been Snapchatting it.
Oh yeah, and then but one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they're trying to do that, and I can't think of the actress's name, but she was kind of like one of the badasses of the day.
Yeah,
and she hits the girl with the van.
Yeah,
and just shoots her in the face with a shotgun.
Yeah, she walks up and just taking out everybody.
The character,
but that's
Lainey,
the only moment when she gets to shine. Really, she's supposed to be a badass.
See,
she mostly spends time just driving the triage van.
Another thing too is I wouldn't mind to see maybe her in the next one. Because or even the thing with her is you could even go and do prequels or something. Well,
I don't know when you get into prequels.
No, but
and so to spoil the end of the film, at the end of this, something comes over the TV and they say basically the Purge. Did they say the Purge is going to end?
So they said the Senator Charlie, what was her name?
Charlize Theron.
No, Charlie Roan. So she wins the election.
Close.
And then but the timelines are different because they're voting in like May or something as opposed to November. But she wins the election, and they said that her executive order, the first thing she'll do when she's in office is to abolish the purge. They said that the NFFA and others are already like starting to riot because they're going to lose the ability to purge. So that's kind of where you would do offshoots for sequels, is people rioting or trying to reinstate the purge after it's been
or they make an unofficial purge night like they had here in Louisville.
Or they try to. So that would be the direction you would go, or like assassination attempts on the president or things of that nature. So then you could even go even further into the Escape from New York type thing. But where they kind of block off a whole area. You know what I mean? And then they like quarantine people and then are like having their own purge within it. Like there's just, you could kind of go in different directions. Or they try to secede, Texas tries to secede from the Union so they can make their own purge state.
Yeah, just a hostile takeover of the White House. But the White House down too.
The biggest problem I've had with these films, because it's kind of like from 1 to 2 to 3, they have one main character die at the very, towards the very end. So in the first film, you had Ethan Hawke's character die. In the second film, out of like that younger couple, the guy died when they were in the Purge party hunting room. Like he got shot and killed, and then like his girlfriend like goes with the freedom fighters, so you don't really know what happened to her. And then third one, Joe dies at the very end. So in all these movies, they kill like one prominent character who was in the main cast at the very end, and everyone else feels pretty much safe throughout.
Yeah.
And like that's, kind of easy to see that coming, and I thought in the third film they might go in a different direction, but they didn't. But too, like they brought the more religious elements in. Those are the ones that reminded me more of BioShock.
Yeah,
more of like BioShock, or maybe it was Infinite, I think, or because that was the one that had the more religious overtones, right?
Infinite had a little bit of racism, touching on racism in the beginning of it,
and then like the it was more like the founding fathers type stuff.
Yes,
so that one kind of reminded me,
and that was very much about kind of the ideal American,
exceptionalism.
Yeah,
about the La de Ludos
and all that. So that kind of reminded me of that. But the so the shot that I was talking about that like to me just looked bad. I had no idea why they left it in. It was towards the end when they had the senator tied up, and before they're all the founding fathers of the Purge were about to kill her, and they were kind of showing some of their faces, and they showed one of the actors' faces. I forgot his name, but
he was the creator of the new founding fathers.
Yeah, so they showed his face, and it's kind of like this out of focus, blurry, bad shot that I thought at first well, maybe this is like from the perspective of the senator, and she's like woozing out of it. It was just a bad shot they left in. And like Derek noticed it too, and I was like, "What was
For some reason, I didn't catch that.
Or maybe that was a projection problem or something." But I was just like, "That looked like they should have definitely not left that in the final film."
Yeah, but I didn't notice that. Nicole said she thought she saw a wide shot in that same scene with ADR.
Oh yeah,
there was one in that.
Yeah, when like the presidential, either the president or the nominee at the time,
the Reverend
came out to speak, like it was like a couple lines of dialogue before his mouth started.
Yeah, see, I didn't notice it there, but then in the triage center. the whatever his name is, the Punisher type character.
Frank Grillo, or not Frank
He's
Grillo,
security
Leo.
in this one.
Leo.
But I think they have a reverse, or, they have a shot of the senator, and then they do a reverse shot of him, and then he starts to say something, and I don't think he's talking yet. I think that's what I thought you guys.
Well, then
were
there
talking
was
about.
the beginning debate between the senator and the reverend. There's a scene like where he's talking, and it's like then they don't have his mouth isn't moving at all for a lot of it, but
Not a huge deal at all, but
just things you know.
I was
kinda
wondering what
funny.
you guys had saw because
And that
I didn't. I think I caught different.
I think
stuff.
that was just emblematic of the fact they had a $10 million budget and a pretty wide scope for this and a lot of ambition. So they probably just had to, run and gun and like, well, he missed that. We'll just work around it. But, overall, the ending of the film ends up with, like I said, like the senator being elected and trying to get rid of the Purge. So you could go in a few directions with like, a possible sequel. But I would be perfectly fine if they left it as is and started a new series. But the fact that it made $30 million in its opening weekend means there will be another film.
Yeah.
But
Well, this writer director, he's moving on to another film next, but it I don't think it's a horror film. It's about I think some couple or something that is skiing, and then let's see, it's called The Silent Land. It says in the French Alps around someplace, a young married couple is buried under a flash avalanche while skiing, and then it's them digging out. Okay, it's a little weird. It's almost maybe it's a little bit like a Twilight Zone thing because I guess the land's silent, like nobody's there when they get out and everything. So it is a little bit of horror, possibly. Thriller is what it's called.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe he's going to give this a break for a couple years.
let somebody else take the reins.
Yeah, my main concern is I don't want him to, like I said, I don't want to see continuation of this storyline. I want to see a new storyline.
I mean, they could have the president be involved in some
Yeah.
aspect, but you need to kind of focus on a different element because you
Yeah.
can't just rehash the same elements over and over. But
Like I said, with how big horror TV is, I think trying to move this to TV may be like a possible place for this.
I feel like for it to be its most effective, it'd almost have to go to like an HBO, Showtime, or like Stars.
Yeah.
Or, maybe
well,
AMC or FX.
you might get more budget on AMC or FX than you do on Stars, but
Well, because like
Maybe not, I
FX
don't know.
wouldn't be too bad. Because the thing with FX is you don't want it to go to like, probably would never, but like ABC or NBC, because then it'd be like Happy Family Time.
but then again, Freeform, which is ABC Family, has Dead of Summer.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean and it seems like that does not seem like a super low budget show.
or the
not that it's
most-
super high, but they have pop
or
music in
Scream
there and
Queens
stuff.
is on Fox, where they're killing people.
But the most
Right.
logical thing would be the Purge NCIS or Law and Order. The Purge.
You have the fact that the Purge is one night a year,
Yeah.
so at each
Well, another thing about the Purge, like one night a year seems kind of excessive. Like, like the Olympics are 4 times, or, once every 4 years. Like, why
Yeah.
not make the Purge like on the off year of the Olympics or something? Like, that seems like a lot.
Yeah.
But so is there any other final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I don't think so.
No, I mean, I really enjoyed it. If you
Yeah, like
you ought to
the
give it
few
a shot.
technical things I noticed are just because we're movie nerds, but
Well, mainly because it's like Christian Bale's haircut change in the middle of Batman.
Well, I saw a trivia on the first Purge, and it said Ethan Hawke's facial hair shape changes, apparently.
See, that's like William's like, oh no, his mustache is
it's
crooked.
just
I'm
like,
done with this
I
movie.
really like the environmental lighting that they use for most of the outdoor stuff, which is kind of how I.
But one time they used a flashlight. So.
No, I'm just saying, like, I noticed all that stuff, so I was like, oh, I like this. And then I noticed a few times, like, oh, they just, what the budget was and what they were trying to accomplish. So it's like they probably just shot that, and then something didn't work, so they just had to work around the footage they had because of, like, a tight timeline, because Blumhouse is known for getting stuff done on time and on budget. So I'd assume that's probably the case there, but nothing that should
Good on
detract,
them,
nothing that detracts from the movie at all, or that most people even notice.
I think too, when people think of the Purge, they think of just like really stupid, senseless movies, and I don't think that's how these movies are. I think that if you,
Like I said, I think that they're more high-minded or more story-driven than a lot of like exploitation type schlock that comes out. But they're not. It's not like Aaron Sorkin writing this
Yeah, the dialogue in none of these movies are all that great. And like I said, the characters aren't stellar either. They're fine. I think the characters are the best in the third one.
Yeah.
I really like the deli owner.
I like Joe.
Yeah. But yeah, the dialogue is just, it's a lot of that stuff serviceable, and there's
Yeah.
some dumb things.
The guy that I hated in the movie was the orange Weasley pill like guy that they kill at the end. I hate that
the guy that was in like the robes and
Yeah,
stuff.
I hate him, and I wish they had killed him in a more fantastic fashion.
They should have had Crispin Glover play that part.
Yeah, that'd have been good. Yeah, I mean, they lean into that religious stuff pretty heavy at the end of that, because they even call it, midnight mass, the midnight purge
But
mass.
like, not to get political or all, because I don't think that's really. But like, there are churches where they like advise people to like bring their ARs and weapons to like service. Mm-hmm. So I could see like militarized churches who would get behind something like the purge and convince people. But then again, it's not those people who really believe religion are using that. It's just people are using that to lure people to their cause or something.
Well, you can easily see some religions coming up around it saying, well, God brought us this night for a reason. We're supposed to, rid the sinners of the earth. Like there's
But the funny way is how they're doing it is like those people that are egging the mass, they're not the ones in the street. They're like paying like private contractors to go and capture people and bring them in.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered everything for this. So
we're going to do Jaws next week, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think we'll do Jaws. And then after that, we'll be doing the Ghostbusters. So we'll see how that goes. But
we might get in a fight the neckbeard while we're doing the podcast. It's possible.
Or we might grow neck beards as we're watching it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's women. But
maybe a Hot Pocket, Mom.
that'll bring this episode of the House by VO Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.